I'm Katie.
I'm Jocelyn. I'm Kalina.
And I'm Erica.
And we are doing our Inservice Presentation on disaster training, specifically earthquakes and power outages. So living in California, the probability of an earthquake is very high. From 1974 to 2003, there were 4,895 earthquakes greater than 3.5. And it's predicted by the United States Geological Survey that there's a 63% chance that an earthquake of 6.7 or greater is going to occur in the next 25 years in the Bay Area. So for these reasons, it's really important for food service employees in hospitals to know and be prepared for an earthquake and also how to respond to an earthquake. So the first thing that you should be aware of is what to do when an earthquake is actually happening. And the phrase that's been coined is duck, cover, and hold on, which you can see from this picture. And what that means is when the ground starts shaking, you want to duck, preferably under a sturdy table or desk, such as these, cover your head, and also hold on to something while the ground is shaking. If there is not a table available, the next best thing is to lie along an interior wall. You want to try to avoid windows, exterior walls, large appliances, which are very numerous in kitchens, but just try and find a safe spot. A lot of people may have heard that doorways are the safest areas for earthquakes, but this is actually false. When buildings were built in older times, this was true because they were made out of adobe, but now with more modern buildings, that doesn't apply. Some other things that you need to be aware of before an earthquake happens are a couple items and locations. So the first of these are medical and disaster kits, which include water bottles, batteries, flashlight, radio, and also maybe can openers and things like that. You also need to know where the fire extinguisher is, because after earthquakes it's very likely that there may be a fire, especially in the kitchen. And an emergency contact list, because you never know what's going to happen, and this should include all of the employees, email address, phone number, and a couple emergency contacts. After the earthquake, you need to know where the evacuation route is, how you're going to get out. This is a sample. Usually there's a primary, there might be a secondary, and this map also shows where there's fire extinguishers as well. And after you evacuate, you need to know where you're going to meet. Your department will probably have like a designated area, and you need to make sure you know where that is so you can all meet there at the same time. The last thing that you should know is the chain of command, because supervisors or head of departments might be busy in the chaos after an earthquake. And for this reason, it's always important to know who's next in the line of command, so if important decisions need to be made, they can be made.
So I'm going to talk a little bit more specifically about what to do after an earthquake happens, immediately after. So the first thing you want to do is check if anyone has injuries. And if you know first aid, it's great because you can help them out. This is one of the reasons why you should always have a first aid class that you've taken, and also be reviewing the information regularly. So if the emergency does happen, you'll be prepared. Also, check for gas, water, sewage breaks, and downed electric lines. You want to make sure that if there is gas on, that you turn it off, because this can definitely be a hazard. However, keep in mind that if you have the lights off when the earthquake happens, or if they go off, don't try to turn them back on. That can actually ignite gas fumes. And then some people might think, okay, well, if I can't turn on the light, then maybe I can light a flame. Don't do that either, because if there is gas that's leaking anywhere in the building, then obviously that can cause a hazard. Also, check the building to see if there are any structural and non-structural damages, like cracked stairs, cracked walls, floors, things like that, and report it to the EOC when you get a chance, obviously later. The EOC is the Emergency Operations Center. So also keep in mind that if you are trying to get around the building to check for damage, don't go downstairs, because you might not be able to see that there is cracks underneath, and it could collapse, which would obviously trap or injure you. Make sure to clean up any dangerous spills that occur. One thing that could happen, this is more in homes, is that you might find yourself not wearing shoes during an earthquake. And obviously that's dangerous because if you're trying to get around after an earthquake to check on these things, to get help, to help other people, you can get hurt if you're not wearing shoes, and then that's going to immobilize you, at least partially. Maybe this isn't so much of a problem for food service, but let's say that you come to work and you have to change before you can start work. If the earthquake happens before you get your shoes on, just keep that in mind. Very unlikely, but who knows. Also, this might not be so intuitive. If an earthquake occurs, don't use any of the toilets in the building and don't use running water until you know for sure that the pipes haven't been broken. What you can do to get water is go to an emergency storage, so like the hot water heater might have some water in there for you to use temporarily until you can get clean water. And then, of course, if you have a phone or a computer, that will allow you to connect with emergency radio programs that will let you know what you need to do at that time. That's a great idea, so you can get information from the outside world if you are trapped. And then, of course, let your family know as soon as you're safe.
Okay, so we're also covering power outages, and these happen with so much more frequency than earthquakes do. They can happen for a myriad of different reasons. It can happen because of the earthquake. It can happen because of a flood, because of crazy wind, because a seagull or squirrel sat on power lines incorrectly. So you have to be more prepared for these. They are less serious though. There's, in terms of structural damage. So you don't have to worry about that aspect like you do with earthquakes. However, there are precautions that you should be taking. And so every food service employee should know, first and foremost, where the utility company's number is listed or have it in their phone so that they can immediately call and get an idea about how long this power outage is going to last, how serious it is, and if there are any special precautions that should be taken. They should also know where a flashlight is located, which seems fairly easy. However, because food service areas are so packed with so many utensils and pots and pans and utilities, things like that, a flashlight isn't usually going to be the first thing that you're going to want to have on hand, but you also don't want to store it in a very tall cabinet that's really hard to reach, hard to find. So you want to have it pretty standard in the kitchen, somewhere where everyone knows how to get to food easily. Another thing you should be able to locate fairly easily is a company that sells dry ice or ice blocks. And this is in the case of if you have lots of food that might spoil in either the freezer or the refrigerator. You want to make sure that that food stays cold and out of the temperature danger zone. Otherwise, you won't be able to serve it to customers or anyone really safely. And then last thing you should have is digital quick response thermometers, and those are going to help you figure out how warm or how cold the food that you're serving really is. Since you won't have many electronically or electrically powered thermometers on hand, those will definitely help you out in terms of serving food if you do plan on still doing that, or checking the safety of your food. And then as a common practice, as a food service facility, you want to make sure that you group all of your frozen items close together so that in the event of a power outage, all of the cold is going to be in one area, and if the heat isn't going to get in nearly as easily, there's not so much surface area for it to work on. And so a freezer will be able to stay cold or keep its contents under 0 degrees generally for 48 hours if it's completely full. If it's only half full, it'll be around 24 hours that you can sort of safely say that food is still edible. Any more than that, and you're going to want to make sure you find a temporary holding facility for the frozen goods, or get that dry ice, get the cold ice packs.
Okay, so now I'm going to talk about what do you do if there is a power outage. So in a hospital food service, most likely there will be a backup generator, but keep in mind these backup generators are important for patient care and comfort, so the food service might not be able to get the energy it needs to maintain. So the first thing to do is turn on any emergency lights or retrieve flashlights. Never use an open flame as a light source. it can lead to a fire or carbon monoxide poisoning. Next is check the circuit breaker. See if the problem is internal. You don't want to bother the utility company if there's an internal problem. If it does seem to be outside, inform a supervisor or employee in charge to call the utility company. If the power outage does seem more wide-scale, the utility company may be overwhelmed with calls at the time, so get a hold of a handheld radio or some other battery-powered communication device and see if you can get information another way. The next important thing to do is communicate with patrons and customers. You might not think of customers in the hospital food service, but as we saw in our hospital food services, they do have cafeterias where people are eating at. So you want to communicate with them, tell them what the situation is, and answer any questions if possible. Make sure to keep them calm. If the power outage seems to be one that will last for a significant amount of time, the next thing you should do is inform patrons of the situation and escort them out of the facility. Inform them that they can no longer be served food in a safe manner. Also, all cooking and preparation should be ceased. Food cannot continue to be made safely at that time, not only for customers, but as employees yourselves. While in California, most of our appliances run on gas and would not be affected in a power outage, you gotta keep in mind that there are other things that are run on electricity that are very important to our safety. An example is if any of you remember, in Southern California about a year ago, there was that wide power outage due to some issues with getting power from Arizona. Many restaurants tried to stay in business at the time, but because they had gas-powered appliances, but they soon realized things like ventilation systems weren't working and restaurants were starting to reach temperatures over 100 degrees, not safe for employees. So cooking should all cease altogether. Store perishables as soon as possible. You want to get them into refrigerators and freezers while they are still cold to help keep them out of the temperature danger zone. As most of you know, reminder that the temperature danger zone is 41 to 135 degrees Fahrenheit. We would like to keep it though below 40 or below 40 degrees if possible. As Kalina said, refrigerators will stay cold for about 4 hours and freezers 24 to 48 hours. If these refrigerators and freezers go into the temperature danger zone for more than 4 hours, or if that food has been previously entered into the temperature danger zone for some time, and this time makes it exceed 4 hours, all that food needs to be properly disposed of. Frozen foods may defrost and not enter the temperature danger zone. If you can keep them below the temperature danger zone, you should be able to use them, but do not refreeze them. This can lead to quality issues in the food. And so that's the biggest thing. And then the last thing is if refrigerators and freezers are not plugged into surge protectors, unplug them during the power outage. When power comes back on, there might be a power surge, which can damage refrigerators and freezers, leading them to be inoperable, something we do not want when we have our power to come back on. We need to keep the food preserved and out of the temperature danger zone.
Any questions?
It's mostly like home use. Are the appliances that we have at home like surge safe? Like you just mentioned, like when the electricity come back on, are they okay?
You would have to check with your specific refrigerator or freezer. I mean, safe practices, probably not, but you just want to be careful.
So, like at home during a power outage, you usually try to keep the refrigerators and the freezer closed. Are you guys all like, how does the food service check the temperature, but also try and keep it closed as much as possible? Like, is it like you go in every hour to make sure it's not below temp, or?
I would probably suggest only go in when you need to go in, right? So
take temperatures of food that you're going to use, but don't go in there and just test everything. That's going to lead to the refrigerator or freezer being open for far too long, and a lot more damage.
And immediately if the power does come back on, you probably want to check temperatures immediately to make sure that you don't wait a while and find out, oh look, my refrigerator's cold, when it actually probably was at a incorrect temperature for during the actual power outage. So yeah, that's an important thing. You want to keep your doors closed. Freezer and refrigerator's doors closed as much as possible to preserve the cold.
You may not know this, but how much food do you need to have on hand for emergency and disaster preparedness?
They recommend 3 days worth, mostly of like canned goods and stuff, and that's why the can opener is really important in the disaster kits. It's 3 days worth of food, and then there should be a gallon of water for each person per day.
In a hospital food service, or also in like school food service and stuff like that, you should have not just for the people who work and are attending the school or at the, but you should have more than that due to the fact that hospitals and schools tend to be used as evacuation shelters.
So what do you do if the generators go out?
Well, as I said, you know, generators go out, you want to keep, I mean, at least for the food service, just like in a power outage, you want to follow the same procedures, keep stuff closed, try and keep it cold, and, you know, if you can't, you have to rely on your dry goods.
Are there any like earthquake drills that like you do routinely throughout the year, or?
Yeah, so there's actually an organization called Shakeout. They have a website, and you can register your company or hospital, and they also have manuals where they provide you with all the information on how to do drills. We have 3 different ones. There's a basic drop, cover, and hold on that you perform I think every October. There's a couple others which are a little bit more involved, where you do group discussions and discuss different scenarios and situations, and with you know, heads of departments and stuff, and you figure out what you would do. So yeah, shakeout.org is the website.
Are you guys all prepared for disasters?
We had they did a fire drill while we were at Sutter General,
Oh wow.
which was kind of cool. But like they all like kind of got in like a big group, and then the supervisor just asked them if they knew all the stuff and like where fire extinguishers were and stuff. So
Did they know?
some of them did.
It didn't seem like
Yeah, no one really knew what was going on. We didn't know what was going on.
Communicating that.
I thought it was like a real fire. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what they have on their sheet, the evacuation plan, is really important for staff, and also on that should have does it have the fire extinguishers?
Yeah, it has little symbols, and then I also found another one. This one doesn't have it, but it also had the location of like the first aid kit and the disaster kit as well. So
So at San Francisco State, we had a fire in our trash can in our restaurant, and all the students and the chef, everyone was running around in circles. And so I had an equipment assignment where they had to find everything, so I added all of the fire extinguishers because they didn't know, the chef didn't even know that we had this pull ring that was away from the front of the line, which has the spigots basically that shoot out all of the fire retardant. He said, oh, we don't have a pull ring. And I'm thinking, you know, this is your area and you don't even know that there's all the flame retardants. So, but very important, especially when, you know, the staff doesn't even know where the fire extinguishers are. How many of you have fire extinguishers in your kitchen? Good job. A couple of you. Any in their car?
Not one in your car?
I used to. I have kids. I'm, you know, mother bear. I can't help it. I do have an emergency kit in my car. But anyway, I'm far from home when I'm out here, so anyway. Any other questions? Comments? Great, well, thank you. Oh, one more.
Sorry, I was just wondering if there's like a specific CASIP like log that needs to be filled out when a power outage occurs, and then who needs to be disposed of?
We didn't have a specific one, but definitely you should be recording temperatures. Like, as we said, you want to keep it closed, the doors closed, but as soon as the power, you might want to check every once in a while, not like maybe every few hours. You do want to check immediately when the power does come back on to see. Now it's not so much of a risk to open the doors because the power is back on, but you want to check immediately to see what the temperature has been reached to make sure if food is safe or not.
And what if maybe like temperature, or like refrigerators that show the temperature on the outside. I know some, especially in food service.
Yeah, that's why, it's very important to have a lot of thermometers, so maybe that would be a way is to have one on the outside or hang one in the window or something like that, so you can check without having to open doors.
All right, thank you very much.